You can share it with all of your finance friends. So today we have some folks helping us with the training. We have Sufyan, our FireNet tech lead, so he'll go over some things towards the end of the presentation. And we have Keith, who will cover the finance use case. So we did have a little question about how you really feel about using flows. So if you just jumped on, you're welcome to fill that out. And we will revisit at the end of the session to see if your views change at all. If we have any interruptions, then these are the reasons here. That's my original guy on the left, and we've now grown by 2. So I'm sorry about them, but at least they're cute. Okay, so for today, we're going to cover general overview of how flows are being used. We're going to look at managing a flow in the FireNet incident account tracker, which is related to this finance use case. We'll look at flows and forms and the connection there. We see a lot of folks starting out with a form and kind of triggering flows from there. We're going to look at a use case with Keith, looking at rules and Outlook, copying email attachments and images from a shared inbox, get that dumped right into SharePoint, isolating signature images, and then ownership. So once this thing is built or used on an incident, how are we transferring that to the next team coming in? From there, we'll look at how to check if a flow is working, and then some troubleshooting tips on if it's not. That would be what I would say is actually the hardest part of flow. Building them, you have to be really smart. I'm always impressed by folks that build flows. Really smart to build a flow, and then troubleshooting does get pretty technical. So we'll look at some common things that we see specifically in the incident space. So how are we going to access Power Automate? This invitation went out to users with a FireNet account. So you go to your Chrome browser, you go to office.com, you sign in with your FireNet account, and you will have the option for Power Automate. So if you've been around a while, I think maybe on this level, it used to be called Flows. So now it's actually called Power Automate, and Flows is a tool within that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you here. So I'm going to go to office.com. And we have our little waffle icon up here. And I'm going to click Power Automate. And then along the left-hand side, you can see My Flows. And this is how you get to the space where we're working today. So after you access Power Automate, the other kind of basic step besides that is forms and flows. So we see a lot of folks trigger flow starting with a form. There's our templates over on that screen that we were just on, but there's not a ton that actually start with a form. So I just wanted to remind folks of a few things when using forms and flow together. So when you are creating a flow and you're going to use a form in it, you want to make sure that, say this is our finance use case, so you're on an incident. If that form needs to change or be edited and you leave, you don't want that form under your account because then nobody can change it. So you want that form to be under group forms. So you'll see group forms on your screen, and I'll go into so I just came up here. So I signed in again, office.com in my browser, and I went to forms. And the interface isn't that great on here. You have, if you're part of a lot of teams, you actually have to scroll down to find My Groups. So from here, you can click on the group, and then you can start your group form. If you want to make sure you have a copy with it, because the thing with forms is once it's in that group space, everybody in the Microsoft team now has access. So if you want to make sure you have a backup copy, you could create it under your own account, and then you can move it. So you could move it to whatever your incident is, 2021 training. So I could create a form. I would make a copy of it. So I just keep that, and then I could move the form over to that group space. What also happens when you build the flow, just to understand the difference, if you've been kind of dabbling in this space with your own forms, there is a different request for form information in the flow, which Sufyan can show us today as well. when you have a form in your own account, so if it's just under my, it's just an individual form and it's not under group forms, and you can tell, so right here, see this one's FireNet support. This one's my own FireNet support. So you can see who they belong to there. So if it's under my named account, when I build a flow under this account, it's going to give me a drop down to choose the flow. If I'm building this flow and I want to pull from the group form, I'm actually going to grab the ID. So that's just kind of some starters for using forms, just to get you going in the right direction. Those are 2 roadblocks sometimes that folks run into, and that's how to get you past them. So Keith will visit the FireNet incident account tracker maybe today if we add his flow information to it in our use case. So the one thing here is that we haven't really stressed in past seasons is to be descriptive in the name of your flow. So if something's not working and you do need help, it would be good eventually if that's actually a standard where it's, just like it is for the Microsoft Teams and our shared inboxes, if there's a similar format _ finance flow. So something that can help us find it to troubleshoot if needed. And you want to keep this here because if Keith comes in and he's building a flow, we have his information. He might make some notes about what it does. So say somebody comes in, they didn't attend this training and now they're scared of flows, like maybe you were at the beginning, but at the end you realize like this is the thing to do. So maybe somebody turned it off and you want to say, hey, Keith, can you add me? I don't have access anymore. Can you add me to that flow you had going? So if it transitions from finance section chief, for example, to finance section chief, whoever's managing that flow, if it goes incident to incident, you won't have to go back and ask that original person because you'll have different owners added along the way and that flow will be shared. But this is good for one other reason as well, in that the user that created it, we don't want them deleted from the Microsoft team. So that's just a reminder that we want to keep that person in the Microsoft team. And then if there's questions, if they're so kind and part of every flow going on in the incident world, then you can follow up and always ask them a question. So I am going to hand it over to Keith for our finance highlight. And hopefully I pass my homework. I will stop sharing my screen and let you walk us through this. And if you have any questions during this component of it, if you want to put them in chat, I can kind of fit them in a good spot as Keith walks through it. This is a workshop, so instead of just kind of running straight through it, we will try to, if there's a question when he's on a certain step, we will try to visit that. And I did upload, Keith, we did get that step-by-step document uploaded. And I don't know, it might need updates, but I'll put this link in the chat as well. So there is how to use Outlook and Power Automate to create a flow. This is a little bit of what you're going to be walking through, Keith. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if folks want to watch that and follow along, they can as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Keith O'Laughlin. So I work for the National Forest System within the National Forest Service, and basically kind of have become, for lack of a better word, the flow master for the Forest Service when we go on to incidents. So, this has just been kind of an evolution over time. So when we were thrust into this brand new space back in 2020, we realized that, automatically looking at each and every email that comes into an inbox and trying to decipher and download all of those documents was time consuming, especially if you get on a very large type 1 incident where you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 resources that are assigned and you just have stuff flying around and you need a little help to keep up with it. And that's where Power Automate or Flow back in those days, that's how it evolved. So it's just one of those tools that we simply use to move all of the traffic that comes into our email inbox with an attachment over into our SharePoint library, into the finance channel, where we can start doing something with it. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple very basic steps for setting up your own flow, then kind of answer any questions that anybody might have, and then ultimately get down to, one of the best things is we can share these flows. So as I've gone through the last several years, I've created a flow that is very highly efficient, has about a 98 to 99% success rate. And it's good enough that I feel confident sharing it, and we can walk through the whole process of, if you have a flow that is shared with you, how can you make that flow your own, and then what can you do with it after you have it. So without further ado, I will just go ahead and get started here. Let me share my screen and let me know when you guys can see everything.
Is it just a picture of green beer that we should see?
Yes, no, that's it's so the camera's pointing. It's so the camera's pointing back at me.
We can see your screen.
All right, perfect. So the first step that I always like to do is I always like to work in SharePoint as opposed to Teams. SharePoint is just a lot more friendly environment. So when I go to my incident, I will go to the channel that is specific for me here. So in this case, finance channel. I'll go to the files, and then I will just go ahead and hit open in SharePoint. What that will do is that opens it up in SharePoint, and then I can just simply jump right in. So as you can see, here's the SharePoint view of this particular of the finance channel, and this one already comes pre-populated with the traditional rollout once a FireNet team is created. But for this instance, I just wanted to go ahead and show you the one extra step that I've taken. So what I've done is I have created a folder in here called 317 FireNet session. So my idea is that everything that comes into my inbox is going to be put into this folder. So as you guys can see, it is open right now. So the goal ultimately is to build a flow that puts all of our documentation into that folder. And once again, that is nested under the uploads. So the things that you need for that, obviously, is you need access to your inbox. If the person setting up your flow does not have access to the inbox and does not have access to the team, you do not have a flow. They have to have access to your inbox. And what I'm going to do here is I've went ahead under my inbox. So here, you just hit create new subfolder. And I've created a new subfolder called 0317 uploads. Once again, this is for today's session what I'm going to be using. So now I have my uploads folder here in Outlook, and then I have my uploads folder here in SharePoint. So now I am ready to begin creating my flow. So the first step that I want to do is I want to establish rules. So rules are essentially an if-then statement that dictates the behavior that is going to occur when an email comes into this inbox. So right now, if anybody sends anything to this inbox, it's just going to sit out here and it's going to wait for somebody to do something to it. So while I have my assistant on the line here, Tara, please send just a generic email into this inbox with the keyword and show everybody that it just sits out here. So this also gives me a great opportunity to circle back on another very important topic, and that's how you drive traffic into your inbox. So the most important step here is you want to ensure that you are communicating with your resources early and often. So for a lot of us, that means, as soon as your team is taking over a fire or starting a fire, day one, getting a finance IEP insert in there that gives specific directions. So for instance, today, my keyword that I'm going to be using is Irish. So I had Tara send an email in here. As you can see, nothing happened to it, even though it has an attachment, because there's no rule to dictate what behavior needs to happen. So now I'm going to go ahead and set that up. So the first step to set up a rule is you want to go to your Outlook settings. So for that, you go to settings, which is the gear shift over here. And then you go to view all Outlook settings. So when your mailbox comes up, first thing you want to do here is you go to mail and you'll go to rules. So as you can see, this particular inbox, there are a whole bunch of rules in here, and I have disabled all of them. So that's just as simple as clicking this little slider button. So now we're going to go ahead and create a new rule. So I'm going to add a new rule, and this is just going to be 0317 flow rule. So I try to name everything very similar. There's a reason for that, and this goes towards the troubleshooting spot. If my flow rule and my folders are all named very similarly, it's easy to figure out where things go wrong. So now I'm going to go ahead and start building my statement. So my statement is subject includes, and I want my keyword here to be Irish. And I'm going to add another condition, and I want it to have an attachment. So that's right down here, has attachment. So basically this first step, what this is doing is so if an email comes in, it has Irish in the subject line and it has an attachment, it's going to do something with it. So now we're going to get down to what gets done with it. So what we're going to do first is we are going to move that email. So I am going to take it out of the traditional inbox and I'm going to move it into the folder that I created here, which for some reason hasn't shown up yet. And if it does not show up, if you can see what I did there, move to. So if it doesn't show up there, the folder that you created, you go to move to a different folder, and then you should see the folder that you created. So as you can see, there's my 0317 uploads. I always like to add another action here. So that is the categorize function. So I hit categorize, and then I'm going to create a new category. So my new category is Happy St. Patrick's Day. So this will slap a tag on my email that says Happy St. Patrick's Day, and it's going to color it Kelly green. Why is this useful? So let's assume that I have a flow in here that has, so I've got time, I've got equipment, I've got comp, claims, cost. All of those documents are coming in here. Essentially what these tags do is they're a visible tag that is attached to this email as it's processed through Flow. And this is another troubleshooting step, because what happens is when an email comes through and it has that tag, if I see a bunch of that sitting in the inbox, I know something's wrong. So somebody's done something that has affected the behavior, somebody has shut off the rule, or something has gone horribly awry. So that'll let me know which one of my flows is broken and how I can begin to address what's going on there. And then further down below here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit stop processing more rules. And then what I could also do is I could hit run rule now. And what this will do is this will take the two emails that Tara has sent in and it would process them. Only problem is I don't have my flow built, so nothing's going to happen. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save.
I'm getting I got excited, Keith, sorry.
I know. So as you can see, my flow is on. That's by the slider bar right here. So it's on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and close this just to show you. So here's two emails, right? So I'm going to go back into my settings because I want to show you an option here of something that you can do. So view Outlook settings, and I'm going to go back to my rules. And this little arrow here that says run rule now, what this allows you to do is, let's say you're coming into an incident, the inbox is set up, stuff is starting to build up in there, and you didn't have flow set up. Or what you can do is you can actually hit this to cause it to run, and that moves all the documents that are already in your box and moves them through the flow. So that's something that we'll do. If I do it right now, all it's going to do is move stuff into here, then nothing's going to happen to them. And that's not what I want to happen. So now our next step is going to be, we're going to move over to Power Automate. So let me switch over to that. So Power Automate. So here we are in Power Automate. So I want to create my new flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go to, you can do it one of two ways. So you can just go to Create. And then this is an automated cloud flow. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit Automated Cloud Flow, or I could go to My Flows, and this will show a whole bunch of flows over the last several years. And I can just hit New Flow and get to the same place, Automated Cloud Flow. So I'm going to go ahead and name my flow. So this is, we're just going to call this 0317 flow. And then I want to search for my trigger. So the trigger is the action that causes this flow to do something. So for what we're trying to do in finance, essentially we are trying to take it so when a new email arrives in a shared mailbox, it's going to do some stuff with it. So that's kind of our trigger here. So what you do here is you can do one of two things. So you can type the app, so the application within Office 365 that triggers your flow, and sort through this long list of items that are in here, or you can start typing in when a new email arrives. What this will show is all of the functions within Outlook 365 that do something with an email. But the key one that I'm looking for is when a new email arrives in a shared inbox. So once again, I can just type in shared. It will query it. So here that actual one is. So the trigger you're looking for is when a new email arrives in a shared inbox V2. So I'm just going to go ahead and check that and hit create. It will take it a second. So now I'm going to go ahead and start populating it. So it's going to ask you for the address of the shared mailbox. So that's the same as what you have here in your Outlook. So that's simply right here. And just for brevity's sake, I'm just going to copy that right there. And I'm just going to pop it in right here. And what you'll see is it'll go through, it'll load up, it'll sync up, it will find my actual email address. And I know things are working good at that point if it truncates it and I can't see it like that. Just know if you are getting to an incident and it is fresh or your FireNet was just set up, it may take a while for things to circulate through the system. So there may be a little latency in creating the step, but just so you know that that is something that you could expect potentially. So next, I want to path to the folder where the documents that I'm looking for are going to be in. So your default is always going to be your inbox, but if you hit on the picker icon, so that's the little folder down here on the end, what I am going to do is I'm going to go inbox, and then as you can see, this shows all of the folders that have been created over the last several years for this. And the one I'm looking for is the one I just created today called 0317 uploads. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show my advanced options here. Generally, most of this you don't want to mess with, although there are one critical step here. So as you can see here, it has include attachments. Default is no. You simply want to take that one and you want to turn that into a yes. So that just means that as things come in, it's going to bring those attachments over. If you set a flow up and you start not getting attachments, chances are you did not change this flag. So then we're going to go for our next step. So the next step can be pretty ambitious or it can be pretty basic, depending upon what you want to do here. So what we're going to, you can build these flows to be as complex as you want. You can make them very basic. It just really depends upon your comfort level with using Power Automate, as well as the technical capabilities of the rest of the folks you work with. So now let's go ahead and hit next step. And I am going to put in here a condition. And what I want to do is I want to pull out the signature blocks, right? So as my items come into this, I don't want a bunch of signature block fodder that says Rocky Mountain Team 3, Go Bears, whatever that may be. I just want to pull all of that stuff out of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a flag in here that says attachment size. So I'll keep going down and see right here, it says attachment size. And what I want is anything that is less than a certain size, I want it to be filtered out. So I don't want things that are, signature blocks, Twitter birds, Facebook logos, agency logos usually come in at a relatively small size. So I just don't want to see that stuff. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just simply going to set a lower cap. So anything that is less than, or actually is greater than, because I want anything that's greater than to get through. So anything that's greater than 18,000 bytes, that's about 1.8 megabytes. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up the rest of my flow from there. I'm not going to set an upper size limit on this. So, typically there's a default size on the size of attachments that will come through in Outlook. We're just not going to mess with that on this flow. So we'll just kind of go from there. So my action that I'm going to add here, so basically what this says, email comes in, the attachment is greater than 18,000 bytes, it's going to do something. If it doesn't, it's going to do nothing. So my action here is, I'm going to create a file. And what I want to use that is I want to use SharePoint. So I scroll down here to that actual attribute. So I hit create file. And then what it's going to want next is my SharePoint site address. So this is the site of your FireNet team. So what you'll do here is if you've already been added and everything is working like it should, you should be able to pull it right out of the dropdown. So for instance, this is named the 2023 training incident right now. So I just make sure that that is indeed the one that I want, and I just go ahead and select it there. And then I want to select the path, so where it's going to go to in this particular team. So I'm going to click on the picker again. And what I'm going to do here is you pass through shared documents. And then finance channel is where we want everything to go. And then remember, I created a folder under uploads. And it's 0317 FireNet session. So that is where it is going to put everything. So next, I want to go ahead and name my file. So I have the ability to dictate how the file is going to be named as it comes in. So for instance, if this is in my personnel channel, I could go ahead and I could start to name the file based upon what I know is going to be coming in. So this makes it easier for my time recorders to name. So I'm just going to put CTR underscore O, whatever the resource number is. That's your XXX 23. So that's the year, and then the month. And then I can also just go ahead and put XX for the day. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple other things in there. So I'm going to put from, because I always want to know who my email's from. So if I can't read it, I know whose email I need to go back and look for in the inbox. And I'm also going to put my attachment name. So I'm going to scroll through here and I'm going to find attachment's name as one of my options. And I'm going to select that there. And then for my file content, what I'm going to do is I'm looking for the attachments content. So I'll just go ahead and select that right there. So basically now what I've done is I have set my flow up, walk everybody through everything once again. So email comes in to the training incident inbox. It will move it into the 0317. It will look for those items that are in the 0317 folder that have attachments. It will size them up. So anything that is greater than this will get through. So I'm not going to be seeing logos. And what it's going to do is it's going to put them in the 2023 training incident 0317 FireNet session folder under uploads with the following naming convention, and it will have my attachment content there. So now what I'm ready to do is I'm ready to go ahead and save this. So my flow is ready to go. We recommend that you test it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to test and manually, I will go ahead and hit test here. And then I will ask my assistant if she will oblige here in a few seconds to send another email. So
I'm waiting until you give me the okay this time.
So wait until you see the wheel start spinning here. That's when you know that it's ready. So
and do you want the topic still to be Irish?
I still want it to be Irish.
Okay. Okay, Mr. O'Loughlin.
Now it's sitting there thinking, thinking. And that's the Chat GPT has grabbed it and put it someplace else. But sometimes this process can take a little while, so be patient, really dependent upon the bandwidth that you have. If you're at a remote site that does have limited bandwidth, just know sometimes this process can take a little while. One way I can always check to see if it actually is working is I can go here, and as I can see in my 317 uploads folder, I have the document from Tara Irish, it's there. So theoretically, everything should work there, and it did. So as you can see here, shows that it went through. So that took 0 time to process, and it took it 3 seconds to put it all the way through, as you can see by my green check mark. So now what I can do is I should, in theory, be able to go over to my SharePoint library, open up my 0317 session, and keep refreshing until it comes through. And there we are. I have the document that Tara sent in. As you can see, it is named right now with the default naming convention that I put in there, which is CTROXXX2303XX underscore, has her email address, and then has the name of the document that's there. Now all I need to do is simply open this thing up, and what you'll see is the document that Tara sent in.
You're getting some applause in the reactions, Keith. You're getting some clapping, some oh wows.
Yay. So yeah, this is just how you set up a basic flow, and just know that they can be really expansive. For instance, I've got one that it sizes the attachments up, allows them to settle in the inbox, so that's why it has such a high rate of efficacy. And then it also sends an individualized email out of the flow itself, as opposed to your default auto response that a lot of people will put in the inbox. So like a lot of people put, the auto responder on in the inbox, your emails received by finance. Only problem with that is what we've noticed over time is that a lot of our resources prefer positive appraisal for sending something into the inbox. So with that being said, if you send something into the same inbox using the default settings in Outlook, they will only receive an auto response once every 24 hours. If you let the flow do it, the flow sends one every time. So, and it also sends it from the appropriate inbox. So if this was my time inbox, or this was my equipment inbox, it's coming back, say, thank you, equipment has received your email, so on and so forth. So that's one of the things I always advocate for trying to build that out. So I will pause there and see if anyone has any questions. Any questions, Tara?
Let's see. Yes, we'll submit time in exchange for praise and or snacks. Nick actually had a question, which I think maybe is new, which you probably ran into, the attaching the name for the file. His question was around the file name. The attaching to the name to it. Is that something new that you're doing this year? Maybe after finding submissions that you had to go back and figure out?
So what I did the reason I did a lot of that, of course, is based upon experiences that we've had throughout the course of the last several years. So, before it was generic, we would just either not name them, or it would just be the email or the attachment name that came in there. That's why I prefer to always have, through here again. So whatever the document type I'm anticipating, so if this is the time inbox, it's going to be CTR underscore. I'm assuming they're mostly going to be overhead underscore again, then your year, month, and day, and then another underscore for who it's from. I mean, you've got a wide list of options that you can put in here, truthfully. But that's where it is from, and the attachment's name. Those are the two that I put in there. Yeah, so what I see the other question there, I'm going to go ahead and address that one. Yes, it autofills the time, that's correct. So also, yes, I set different flows up for different inboxes. So for instance, let's go to the inbox here for this one. So
So
like
do
this is
you
what,
mean inboxes or folders?
so folders in the inbox. So let me
Okay,
make that straight. So
got
for
it.
instance, let's pretend this is an actual incident. So I've got my main uploads folder that I'm creating in there. And if what I would do is I would have comp, cost, proc, and fine. So those are the essential, that's just what as a finance section chief I decided we should have. So those are what we're going to push through. So you'll have different rules for each one of those and different flows for each one of those, which, don't be scared because there's some cool stuff you can do with Power Automate once you've got your initial flow that works set up. So let me cover that because that's probably a really good question to answer. So let's say here under my 0317 uploads folder, I want to also do another one. I want to do a subfolder that is 0317 dog pictures.
I tried to put Tucker's Christmas card picture, but it was too big for me to attach.
So what I can do is let me go ahead and go back to my flow. And what I can do here is now let's go ahead and I want to go ahead and just hit save as here. So what I'm going to do is this is essentially making a copy of this flow so that I don't have to recreate this entire wheel again. And I'm just going to call this the dog 0317 flow. So it will save it. And what I will do here is I will go back to my flows. Now I see that I have the dog 0317 flow. It is off. All I have to do is hit the pen here to edit it. It will open up now and I will dictate the behavior that I want to see, or at least where I want to put it. So now what I want is as things come into the incident, into the 0317, I actually want it to go one level further down. So inbox 0317, and then I've got my dog picture. So now it's going to look for anything that comes in that is going to be in that 0317 dog pictures. And then let's say I also want to go ahead and I want to put them in a different folder here. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my uploads folder, my 0317. I'll just create a subfolder in here called dog pictures. And then I will edit my flow to put everything in that folder that I just created that hasn't shown up yet. There it is, dog picture. So now I will go back. I will edit the rest of my flow. So I will go here to this folder path and I will just hit the picker. And then once again, it's going to be shared documents, finance channel, upload, 0317 FireNet session, and dog picture. So now all I would have to do is simply set up a rule in Outlook so that if anything came in and it had the word dog in the title, it would put it into that dog picture folder and it would get processed through this flow. So with that being said, I'm not done yet. There is one more crucial step before I can just sit it and forget it and not worry about my flow for the rest of this incident. That is, I'm going to put it in the FireNet incident account tracker. And I'm going to ensure that I use this flow name. So what I will do is I will navigate to my FireNet incident account tracker, which just happens to be under the general channel. So I would simply fill this out with all of my information so that the next person who comes in knows who created this.
So that everybody can call Keith. Just kidding, Keith. We're going to have a lot of experts this year.
Yay. I'll just put in my number so they can call me on the phone. Flow name is boom. 0317 flow set up. Set up for the finance channel. So now whoever comes in will know, hey, this is set up. It's Keith O'Loughlin's the one who set it up, and it's for the finance channel. So now we get ready for the dreaded transition. All right, you're coming in. You're the next person up for bids. Your team has just inherited an incident with a working flow. Oh my God, what do you do? Well, you just simply have whoever is the finance section chief or whoever set that flow up add somebody on your team, whether it be the finance section chief or your ITSS to that flow. So what you're going to find here.
Hey Keith, if you want to add Sufian to this, so he's coming in on team 2 as our finance section chief. So we want him to have access or be able to fix it.
So what I will do is I'm going to come in here and I've got my owner. So I'm just simply going to hit edit over here. And then what I can do is I can just start typing in the name, or I could copy and paste, which I just happen to do because it's so much easier. This box will show up, and this sometimes freaks a lot of people out because you're under the assumption that somebody's going to be able to read your FireNet emails because there's such juicy stuff in there. Don't worry about it. It doesn't share your FireNet account. This only shares the delegated inbox connections, which are necessary to make this work. So what you're going to do is you just hit OK there. Now, Sufian has access, as you can see here. And what they can do is just keep on moving on. They have access to this flow. They can get in, they can modify it. They can do whatever they need to keep it running in perpetuity, or they can turn it off. So maybe you don't like what the flow is doing, you get in there, your team doesn't like it. Just know the cure for that is to turn it off. Don't freak out. Don't call Tara. Don't call the FireNet help desk. Simply go in here, do 2 things. Hit turn off right here on the flow. Go back to your inbox, go to your settings, go to view all Outlook settings, go to your rules, shut off your rule. So now if Tara sends another email into the inbox with the heading Irish, watch what happens.
Come in.
So it will come in, and it will eventually be sitting right here at the top of this. But just know that now the flow is not operational, and it will not work. And if I want it to, I have to go and I have to turn the rule back on and the flow. So as you can see, she sent her email in, had the keyword in there, had an attachment, but it didn't process it and put it down here because it didn't have anything that was in there that caused it to work. Now let's touch on something that I did say earlier. So let's say you came into an incident and, you've set up flow and now you want to clean and scrub the inbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to my Outlook settings and I am going to turn my rule on. And then I'm also going to go to Power Automate and I'm going to turn it on as well. And then what I can do is from this inbox is I'll go ahead and I will hit this right here. And what you'll see is it'll run through. It took all the emails that were sitting out here that had Irish as the subject line. It moved them all over here into the 0317 uploads. What it's now doing is it's processing Power Automate on all of these emails and it's putting it through.
Hey Keith, a question. Great question in the inbox related to the adding Sufian. Can Sufian then add another owner?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how it kind of transitions on and on.
Yep. So and then I guess
so technically if there's a team that, the second team doesn't want to, third is like, Keith was first on the incident and set up this amazing flow. We want it working. Reach out, they get added and they could just essentially go turn it back on.
That's correct.
Okay. Do they have to change connections or anything, or no, they just have to turn it back on?
Nope, just have to turn it back on, but also just make sure that the pathing is correct, because sometimes people will do things that inherently sabotage flow. So you have to make sure that all those connections are working. So I can show you what I'll show you here what some of the main things that you can do to mess up a flow. So this would be one of them right here. Dragging a folder and putting it inside of another folder. Flow's broken. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? Stuff is going into the inbox. Nobody knows where it's at. So the big thing is that's where you just got to really look and know where stuff is. So here's my folder. I'm just going to drag it back out to uploads there. I'll go back here. It's sitting there. Flow will automatically usually restore here if once it finds all of the pathing, and it will work from there. So Robert, can dispatch add owners? So if dispatch is an owner, dispatch can add owners. If dispatch is not an owner, they cannot add owners.
Question on related to users turning flows off, like in the middle of an incident. It's still going into the inbox, whether your flow is on or not, right?
That's correct. So the big thing there, and that's why you want to turn off your rule at the same time that you turn off your flow. Because the last thing you want is a bunch of stuff getting buried here in your cost folder, in your proc folder, in your time folder that nobody's messed with.
I know I think there were some big incidents last year that ended up being a huge mess. But if they had technically, if they like kept the flow on in the background and just did their thing, all the information would have been in one spot, right?
That's correct. Yeah, and that's also, so another thing you can do to mess up your flow is to change your flow, your structure here within the inbox. So let's say you rename one of these folders. So as soon as you rename something here, it will generally disrupt your flow. Now, Microsoft does have some intuitive rules. So sometimes it will adapt a new name that I use in here in the inbox so the Outlook connection works, but the flow portion does not work. So that's where things get broken, is when it's not seeing the folder here in flow. So also I want to point this out for everybody. So now that I've shared that flow with Sufyan, if I go here into my cloud flows, you'll notice that flow is no longer in there, right? What happened to it? Where am I going to find it? Go to shared with me. So because I shared it with somebody else, it is now a flow that is also shared with me. So that's where I can find that flow. And then ultimately, I'll give my last big plug here for the flow that works really, really well. And that is this flow right here is kind of one that has evolved over time. And what it is, the same thing that we had there, basically something comes into the inbox. What it has is a 45-second delay built in, runs it through the whole condition statement for sizing, puts it into whichever folder I want it to do. But then this one also has the auto direct script for the email. So what it's going to do is it actually sends it out. Thank you to whoever sent the flow in. We have received your email. If you have an urgent need, please call us. I've got my fire name, my incident inbox, my phone number. I can even put an attachment out there. Hey, tell me how I'm doing. If I go down here, once again, shows the email that the flow is coming out of, and of course from, and then in the subject line, I could put from time, from comp, from claims, from equipment. So it all comes through like that. What I can do is I will gladly share this flow with anybody who wants it. I shared it widely at a training session that I just had. As you can see, about 30 people are owners on this one. And what I will do is I'll put a Microsoft form here in the chat. Anybody can open up that form. Simply put in your email address and I will get you added onto that flow. And then you can take that one and adapt it to your own incident or play with it or break it, whatever you feel like.
And would they copy it? Because
So
you don't,
what you'll do,
they could technically, they could edit your flow if they wanted to, right?
they could, but what you do is you save as. So that's where you take that flow. So once you are an owner of it, what I will do is I will just simply hit save as here. And then I will just simply rename it. 2023 training incident flow. I hit save. So now if I go back to my flows as opposed to my shared flows, now I can see that that is right here, 2023 training incident flow. It is no longer shared with me because I am the solo owner of it. So now what I can do is I can simply take it in here. I can repath it to my incident as it comes in, name everything accordingly, fix the autoresponder, and it works perfectly.
Update the name of the incident. Maybe you said that.
Yep. And also, so in this one, what you'll find is I put prompts in here. So it says change the email address and folder to reflect your current incident. And then delay, do not change this.
Nice.
Down here, so I put little cues in each one of these. So it like says do not change this. Down to create a file, path this to your incident. So it's got little cues in there that tell you what you need to do all the way through it.
So once say they get access to this and they save as, they'll have to connect, right? They'll have to update the connections.
Correct. You have to update that to the connections.
Can you show us that?
Sure. So,
you can share it with me if you want.
Okay. So, are you going to show us how? Are you going to show us how to do it? Or
sure.
I'll walk you through it. How about that?
I'm good. I'm like an expert now, Keith.
All right. So I'm going to share this with Tara. There she is. Going to let her have access to my inbox so she can read all the juicy FireNet emails that come in. And now she has it. So now I am going to walk her through pathing it for her incident. So I'm going to stop sharing. Tara will share. She'll walk you through how to make it your own and path it to your own incident. So Tara, screen is yours.
All right. I'm going to go into my flows, my Power Automate. And I'm going to look under shared with me. Keith just shared that with me. Here's Keith's. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to save as because I want my own copy. I don't want to break Keith's flow that he's now shared with everybody. Oh, and it does the connections. It's doing my connections right out of the gate. How does it know it's shared? Okay. So I have to be a member of the Microsoft team for this to work, and I have to have access to the shared inbox. Would that be correct?
That is a fair statement.
Okay. Did it copy?
It did. So now it's going to be under your flows.
So I can see my connections over here. So now I'm going to dig into it and update a few things. I'm going to edit here. I'm going to have some reminders. So I would update the email address. So I'm going to change it 2022 Tara Rocks Flows. This one, the delay, it says don't touch it. This one, I'm going to change the name of my incident. So that's updated. I'm going to trust everything Keith has. Do not change this exclamation point. That means really don't change it. And then I have to update my site address because I don't have the same site that Keith did. So I would pick my site and my folder path because my folder path. And then as long as I want the same, then these would stay the same. And these letters would be different, right?
So that can be static depending upon if you're doing like an equipment flow or a time flow. So if I was going to do a equipment flow, you would just hit, instead of CTR, you'll put ST.
Okay.
course.
And then
Yep.
my
Take it.
XX, those numbers that would be different, right?
Yep. So
Yep.
you can do ST underscore and then EXX. So because this is my equipment flow, you're assuming that everything that's sending something in is a piece of equipment. So it would just go through like that.
Okay. Then
So
I would
now,
save it.
yep. So now assuming Tara sets up everything, has her inbox set up, sets this up, it's all hers. She can operate independently.
And because it's connected to my FireNet account and I'm a member of the team and the shared inbox, it's just going to work.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Did you have a thing where people can ask to be added, Keith? Were you going, did you have a form?
I do. I have a form, but for some reason my computer is probably going to shut down on me. If you go to that PowerPoint document that I sent you, Tara,
Yes.
you'll find there's a form if you want to flash that last page.
Yep.
And then maybe pop that. There's a QR code so people could actually fill that out if they wanted to.
Cool. And I can share, I could post this for the group too.
Yeah, and what this, so this presentation is really kind of tips and tricks on success using Power Automate. So, you know, a lot of people have had varying degrees of success with this. This just kind of goes over some of my top level observations that I've come across that really make it a lot easier for people to navigate. So, and then also troubleshooting steps that I've noticed that if people follow these rules, they'll be successful.
Awesome. And Keith's his demonstration was seamless. But a lot of times you won't see this green arrow. I'll show you some. I'm gonna go to shared with me. We were running some. Oh, it was under my admin account. We were running some. Let me show you over there. We had some stuff breaking. I just want to show you kind of how you can dig into a broken flow. So we have a flow on the help desk side that sets up incident teams for us. So we were visiting that. Oh, which account is it under? Sufyan, do you want to show a broken flow? Oh, this is my DOI. Oh, sorry, that's my DOI account, not my admin account. I don't do much.
Yeah, I'm actually looking. I'm looking for one right now.
Okay, cool. We got a bunch of broken ones on this end. Now that I'm in the right account. So FireNet incident setup. So you'll see the run history down here. So you'll be able to, like Keith can go in and see that, you know, you can monitor if flows are working. So this failed. So I'm gonna click on it. So you'll get a little error detail here, but you can be like, yes, green check, green check, green check. And then like, this is the exclamation point that you don't want to see, but you will. And then you just kind of dig, you can dig into it and then the error message. Then there's some different code that it'll tell you. But that's how you kind of, as you troubleshoot, you know, if it says folder not there or something's pointing in the wrong direction, that's how you would kind of troubleshoot. Sufi and Keith, we're at the half-hour mark. I'm not sure if you guys have anything that you really want to add left, or if we're good. We could go in and vote again on the Mentimeter thing, see if our results change. Here's where we were at the beginning of the session. I'll throw that link in and let's see if it changes for everybody's How do you really feel about using flow question? If it'll let you put in another answer. We'll see if this changes real quick. If not, if there's any more questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat box and we can make sure to answer it. Keith put in the form there that you can get a copy of his flow. Just a reminder, flow is like something that, it's our users are using it, but it's not like fully, if you set something up, you really want to make sure somebody on your team knows what they're doing and how to manage it. That's pretty important. So it is still a little bit of a use at your own risk, but we are getting more and more skilled folks on the topic. So we can definitely try to help you on the incident help desk end. And it looks like our 6 date, nobody else said what's a flow after the training. So we're in good shape. Thank you for joining us. Next week on Thursday, we have the incident account set up. So finance section chief, PIO, plan section chief, DMOB, resource unit leader. That's a good one. ITSS, that's a good one to jump on. If you haven't had one of us at your incident, your like IMT meeting for the year, jump on that training, and it's kind of from the beginning to end, and any changes, not too many changes from last year, but we'll make sure to go over anything. So your FireNet email should have an invite to join that. And we thank you for joining us, and thank you Sufians on the support end during the day, and Keith, as always, you're just so awesome with this, and you do such a great job teaching, and I know you're really busy and your day job, so we appreciate you coming on with us today. And I will stop the recording. So this will be posted online. I think this is a great recording.